Anyway, go ahead. Tell me what your boy was thinking.
No, I can't because it doesn't make sense. And here's the danger of social media too, not just for players, but now for coaches who, prior to becoming a coach, go on air and put stuff out there. It was not so long ago that he went on Twitter and said, hey, we got to talk about clock management tomorrow when he was doing broadcasting, right? Now he is the subject of clock management. He's on the other side. And I will say this first off, it is a lot harder when you are in the fire than when you are not, right? It is easy for us to sit back here and second guess, right? So I'm trying to keep my
100%.
friendship with him. I'm trying to keep my friendship with him
100%.
while telling the truth, okay? But here's the thing, Michael. If we go through the entire season, every week we say this about coaches and clock management or game management. Even in the Tampa Bay game this past Sunday, Todd Bowles says he didn't want to take a chance with where they were at on the field because there's a possibility of an interception, knowing that his quarterback is Tom Brady, who hasn't thrown an interception since the dawn of time, and you have a chance to win that game in regulation. So, I'm here to tell you, in hindsight, yeah, Jeff made a huge mistake. We were questioning it in real time, but in hindsight, he made a mistake. But so many coaches have done this. And
Right.
I almost tweeted last night that there should be a course for coaches on clock management or game management. But even then, I don't know that it would matter because when you are in the fire, man, life comes at you fast. And it's hard sometimes to make the right call under those circumstances.
But I think it is a skill that can be learned.
Yes,
and
agreed.
like some people, all right, let's say the 2% of coaches who just have it instinctively. They got it. They got a clock in their heads. They don't need any training on it. Then there are like the 2% of coaches who just never going to get it. Okay. They
Right.
just, no matter
True.
what, they're not going to. But then, okay, then how's my math? 96%. There's some 96% that, can get better at it with some type of training. I think you can do a simulation with it. It's a simulation. It's not the real game, but it at least gets you into that little mental exercise where you're organizing what's the game clock? What's our timeout situation? How far do we need to go? What kind of plays can we run? How many plays
Right.
can we run in X amount of
Right.
time? And what's the best way to do this? And you don't have to figure it all out by yourself. That's the crazy thing about it. And I guess I'll never understand why certain coaches struggle mightily at it, because it's not like you've got to think for the defense and the offense. You got an offensive coordinator, you got a D coordinator, you got a special teams coordinator. You're the head coach. You're just dipping in. You got the 30,000-foot view. So you should
But let
be
me
the
ask
one
you this.
who should be a little more slowed down than the OC, right?
Right, but let me ask you this. There is an element of self-awareness here, and there is an element of accountability here. And if you are a head coach who can say to himself, this isn't a strength of mine, right? My strength is leading and getting men to follow, right? All those sorts of things. But game management or clock management isn't necessarily my strength. Why not have somebody on staff in an industry, in a multi-billion-dollar industry, and where there is so much detail and focus on so many layers of this game? If I were a coach who said my strength is not clock management or time management or situational football even, I'm definitely going to have somebody on my staff. And I know some people like to call them the analytics people, right? I'm not even trying to get into all that. But I'm just saying have someone on my staff who is damn good at those things or those situations, who can be in my ear, at least give me something to think about as we're going, right? Know your weaknesses, know your strengths is what I would say. And in this case, there are a lot of coaches who don't know that their weakness is clock management and game management or situational football.
Okay, now you're telling me, I'm just saying, if I were an owner and my head coach says to me, my weakness is situational football, my first thought is, thank you for telling me that. My second thought is, We appreciate your service. See you later. I mean,
No,
like,
right. No.
if you can't look,
No,
if
wait.
if your weakness is
Go ahead.
situational football, why are you coaching my team? Why are you
No,
my coach?
because
Situational football.
because of this, Michael, as I said, and I know I'll get grief for this and whatnot, but there are so many layers to being a successful head coach. And not
Right.
every and the number one thing, if I'm talking to you or if I'm an owner looking for a head coach, I want someone who can lead, right? I want someone
Right.
who
I agree.
can motivate, get their players to follow, all of that. Now all the other things start to come into play. Because if you can't do that fundamentally, you got no chance. That's what I believe. Now come the other things. To your point, if you say the interview's over or thanks for the interview or whatever, Tony Dungy told me this story where he was once interviewing for a head coaching job. And this is obviously before Tony Dungy is Tony Dungy. And he goes in and the owner says to him, essentially, how important is winning to you? And Tony says, it's important, but it's not the most important thing. And he basically tells the owner that family is important, family time is important, these sorts of things. And of course, the interview basically ended there. Tony didn't get the job. Why? Because he was honest with him in terms of understanding where his priorities were, what his strengths are, those sorts of things. So I'm saying to you, as an owner, I'm not necessarily going to rule you out if you tell me that clock management is not necessarily your strength. What I'm going to ask you is, then how do you deal with that? How do you overcome that? What is your plan for that if that is not your strength? And if you can answer that question for me capably, then we can continue the conversation. If you can't, as you say, then the interview's over.
Yeah, clock management. I think clock management and situational football are two different things. That clock management is what it is.
True.
Situational football can happen at any point in the game. And I feel like in the NFL, if you don't have a great team, if you don't have a juggernaut, then situational football will determine whether your team wins 6 games or 9 or 10.
Agreed.
Just your
Agreed.
mastery of that, because the games are so close, the talent's so close. So that would scare me. But clock, I'm always amazed though. Clock management, it wouldn't scare me. I'm just fascinated by it. I just wonder why certain people don't get it. Now, a guy who worked with Tony Dungy, now we're just going to name, let's just name drop. Jim, that's fine. But we're doing it in the course of a conversation. We're not name dropping just for the sake of name dropping. But anyway.
No, let's name drop for the sake of name dropping. Let's go ahead. Let's do it. Why not?
But a guy who worked with Tony Dungy on the same staff. You know how much I love Marty Schottenheimer. So Marty Schottenheimer, on his staff, at one time, he had Tony Dungy and Bill Cowher. So think about that staff. Marty Schottenheimer, Bill Cowher, and Tony Dungy on one team. That's just crazy. Anyway, but Cowher, when he left Marty and took over the Steelers, his first head coaching job, his only head coaching job, he immediately just went back to his math. He's very strong in math. Went to his math background and was like, you know what? Once we get a lead, we really have to be foolish to give this lead up. So we're going to start milking this clock. And he would start it. His clock management he didn't wait until the last 3 minutes. He started third quarter. Hey, we're going to be aggressive when we need to be, but we're not going to be foolish. And the receivers are going to be upset because they're going to want us to throw the ball more. And I'm not doing that. We got a lead. And he pointed to his record. His record with the lead in the fourth quarter, I think he's got 1 loss and 1 tie in his whole career. He just didn't blow leads. Part of it
is, you know what that is, Michael?
Time management and situation.
Yeah, but but fundamental to that and the core principle of that is he had an identity that he believed in and that he was convicted about. And this is the way we are going to play football, and this is how we are going to win games. Period. And too many coaches don't have that. And that's why when we talked yesterday about the Michigan-Ohio State game, sorry to bring that up again, but what did Jim Harbaugh do?
I missed it.
After all of those years.
Where's the game?
No, after all.
Is the game next week?
Spoiler alert. It's not good for the Buckeyes.
Did they lose?
But anyway, they did. But anyway, when Jim lost all those games consecutive years to Ohio State, what did he do? He went back to what his core principles were, and that was running the football, playing physically up front, those sorts of things. And since then, what have they done? And I'm assuming they're going to go to the college playoffs this year. back-to-back years in the college football playoffs. When we talk about the Tennessee Titans, for instance, one of the reasons I love watching the Tennessee Titans play is because Mike Vrabel has established a culture and an identity there that everyone buys into, and it is not about deception and trickery and all these things, although he will use it at times, but it is about fundamentally, this is what we do. We don't care that you know. We believe we're going to out-execute you. We're going to play situational football at times. We know what our identity is, et cetera, et cetera. So those are things, those are the coaches and the teams that if you look at them historically who have success, is that they have an identity and they stick to that identity and they have conviction about what it is they're doing. So when you bring up Bill Cowher, absolutely I can see why, in part, why they were successful beyond just the talent that they had on the field. It was because everybody knew who on that team knew who they were, what their role was, and how they were going to play football.
Hey, thanks for watching Brother from Another on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe before you leave, and be sure to watch us 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Peacock. Appreciate you.